protected areas folks to try and make that piece happen. So just getting that going would be good, but I do think, I agree with Simon, we shouldn't lose that piece of species information if we can find something useful there.
I just wanted to tell you about a project we worked on recently where we collated all the information related to invasive species prevention and management, all the legislation information for all the European overseas territories. It's a massive database, like every country's legal thing, and we couldn't find quite a few of them on EagleX because we used it as a first place to look for information. So I'm wondering how we could pass on the data set to you, because it's been reviewed by all the country people and that peer review process has been completed. That's some way we can link to EagleX. There's another thing, all invasive species have different legal status in different countries. Is that something we could include? Like in some places it's like a noxious species and it's got different status. That's quite important because that's like an early warning system in itself, that it has some kind of legal status in different places. I don't know whether that could be part.
Well, it could, but we mustn't be too ambitious, Shana. So
no, we have this information already,
okay.
So I'm not sure where we could feed it in.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm hesitant to put it up unless one of you two tells me you're going to actively have a chat and make it happen. I think we've got enough to do, actually. Akbar? This is a quick fix Akbar's going to suggest.
Can I make an action point?
You can make an action point. You can suggest an action point.
Yeah, sorry, I was saying. So basically, we have got lots of errors coming from one to the other, bilaterally, effectively, you could say that, from one system to the other. And I would say that it's very, very important that we try to have one source of exit, basically, from systems. I mean, I am currently very much involved with the release of species, and I would not consider doing 4 exit points to different systems. Just one exit point that would work. And I would say it's very important that all the other people with the other systems, where I would really like to be involved with, definitely, that they think about this from now, effectively, to avoid having problems of several exit points and then systems not being updated, all these kind of problems. So
thanks. That's very practical. So please keep Akbar involved in all your thinking. I mean, his terms of reference for IUCN include integrating the flagship knowledge products. This was approved by our Deputy Director General. So we want to be sensible about this, and he can help, be a resource. Ed.
I just suggest a way of bringing in the 2 new outliers, if you will.
Yes, please. Yes, I was going to ask you, so I'm glad you said it.
Do you want me to?
Yeah,
what colour would you like?
Pardon?
Well, what colour? Because it's going to be a very new one. I would suggest the human dependency has an arrow going to the red list of species and to the red list of ecosystems, because some of the dependency is medicinal plant X, wild food Y, but there's also ecosystem services like water, culture, or whatever. So I'd suggest.
Must think about in relation to just the one-way arrow. Is that what we?
No. I'm just.
No, we've got Craig and Simon immediately putting their hands up. So let's just hear that.
It's a 2-way affair.
Before we do drawing, Craig.
So the red list has a trade and use module in it, plus a livelihoods module. So depending where the human dependency one goes, if it goes the right way, we can then link those.
Yeah, I mean, this is the work. We've done a lot of work, and we need to get the people together to share information on the work that's being done. This is the action point, and Ed's going to have to help me with this. He knows why. To make the people sit down and make sure that people don't reinvent the wheel, because we've done a lot of work on this, a lot of thinking. A joint workshop with CSP and SEC people, which was extremely productive. I mean, it's been very challenging to sort of finish it all off. But so let's not waste that work.
No, there's a huge amount of information out there in the species data set, and even there's huge amounts of information in other places. So we need to make sure that that's tracked. So
I don't have another colour. I would have used green, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to do dots. This is something that needs to be considered in the development of this thing.
Very small dots, those are.
I think they'll show up. I think it's okay.
When somebody takes a photograph of this.
I'm taking a photograph of this. It's absolutely the whole point. I've even got my key written down here.
And I would suggest it goes down to the ecosystem services, which is also related, like water.
Okay, that's going to be a tough one technically, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Maybe John Paul appreciates that as well. But it is a real. Now, on the natural resource, no, that's
Yeah.
at the moment. On the natural resource governance framework,
yeah.
that's a fun one.
You've got to link that to WDPA, sure.
No, there's no question.
Shall I say something about that?
WTPA has a direct linkage with, or will have, one hopes. And again, does it relate? No, I think there's a maybe through the same field, Craig, the species, and it has a link into land, the ecosystem use as well.
Great. Simon, do you just want to come in on this point? Could Simon have the mic, please?
On Ed's point, yeah.
On Ed's point?
So I agree with Ed's points, but I'm just going to add a few things.
Thanks.
So just on that last point, you're actually making that links through to the register of species and ecosystems. That again, from the natural resource governance knowledge product, that link becomes, I think, a bit easier and clearer in a moment with green list elements added to those knowledge products, because they're actually looking at, in a sense, effects of governance. So I think that will become easier down the road along there. I would also say that the human dependence of nature one must go into KVAs, because a lot of that is site specific. And in fact, we had a very discussion during the KVA workshop on the need to make that link again.
So dotted line KVA.
So this means aspirational link.
No, but it's to influence those groups working on the framework.
Yeah, if you can get that in the next, it's a very, very good point, yeah.
The modest step that we can take in that direction is to reflect as an attribute the governance type. It's actually inherently is already reflected, because when it says what is the designation, that actually indicates the governance type, mostly government.
Because not everybody realizes that,
Yeah,
right?
and then so that's kind of covered, but it doesn't take it to the next level, which is what Colleen was speaking about, that there's the governance type that's hidden, which is indigenous and community conserved areas and territories. So that's just started, and it's a small number. But another one that can be added actually from the existing information is whether it is, for example, shared governance, whether it's a transboundary area or whether it's government that is actually engaged another agency to be the governor of it. So the distinction between ownership and management authority isn't already there. But there's lots of data cleanup. This is the phase here is populating a current relational database with the attribute data that is partly available, for example, from Ecolinks, partly available from these, the data provider. So there's a ton of work to do before that becomes actually useful.
Yeah. I think there's a ton of work to do on several of these lines, actually. When in reality, when we wake up tomorrow morning, think, why, crack up, we gave us a lot of
So
work
we
to do today.
probably in the course of this Biopharma project, in the regions where we have focal countries and focal sites, we can take a sampled approach in 4 regions of the world and start there. It's not going to be universal, so we're going to have to. So this is a factor we could consider about next steps. Are there any places where we could advance integration ahead of the pack, if you like, because we choose certain countries, choose certain regions, and actually.
I think no problem with that at all. And we can't answer that question for every single arrow because we're simply out of time. But you make a good point, and behind every arrow there's a lot of complexity and there's a lot of tidying up existing data sets. And as we've already seen, when you have you overlap things and you integrate them, you throw up a load of other issues. John Paul.
I remember Ed and others telling me about the meeting you had in Guam, that you had indeed thought about Senegal as one of the places where we could do this, what Trevor was saying, the ahead of the pack integration. So when you pick a place like Senegal and bring in the red list of species data with these assessments that the people are doing area and so on, and start looking at the difficulties and making that happen in a small enough area that we can handle.
So like we kind of almost like looking at a prototype and seeing the issues it throws up. I think that's a really good idea. Ed?
Linked to that, we've not clearly say we test out Senegal. We can also test out what are the different types of governance regimes that one can explore there and link into the, so contribute back to the governance.
The governance of the product you're talking about, rather than governance issues in a protected area.
The governance issues in the ecosystems, in the protected areas, amongst the resource users who are using it. So the governance is more than just the governance of the community conserved area or the protected area. It's also relating to tenurial rights based, and that this is part of the.
That's part of this, isn't it?
That is going to be part of that, so we have to build that in, and that's why it links into a dotted line to the registered species, because the governance of my rights to cut down a tree might be compromised by the registered species saying it's endangered. And likewise, my rights to use an area of land, an ecosystem, needs to be informed by that, as well as negotiated with the governance regime for rights to information, rights to manage, use, abuse, or whatever it might be.
See, I agree with that, but what I'm trying to avoid is linking everything to everything.
I know, yeah.
So I agree with you, and I think all of these, in some way, shape, or form, have a bearing on all the others. But this is enough. You know what I mean? And if you do it, and I didn't put it up here, that's fine, isn't it? You know, it doesn't matter. I think this is a basis now. If we can agree that everybody's going to write their two-pager, and that these one-to-one discussions are going to happen, in order to write the two-pager, we can then merge it all and make sure everyone's circulated. That's what we must make sure we know who everybody who's here, right? So we better send a sheet around quick, or grab everyone's business cards, or write down a list or something. And then we've got the makings of a plan, which I think will be extremely helpful. Simon. And I know, sorry, Tim, I know you want to come in, but take Simon. Sorry about that.
Sorry. Well, just on your last point, yes, we have to prioritise. We can't build every knowledge product and every linkage simultaneously. We know we can't do that. And some of them might be a very long way down the road for purely practical or financial reasons. But I think we have to think, as we develop knowledge products, we have to think about potential integration at the time they develop. So you don't build in inflexibilities that cannot be fixed later on. And so the sorts of things that send off alarm bells in my mind is if a knowledge product is built too narrow, too specific a potential use, it's often then inflexible to be used more broadly. And so we need to just put that up as a flag, except that we can't develop all linkages.
Is everybody comfortable with what Simon says there? And I must say I fully agree with it. But the implications of what Simon says are that we all do have to talk a little bit more than we're currently used to doing. Yeah? Because we may close off options, which may make it more expensive down the line to integrate in a good way. So this is why it's good, I guess, that we'll meet and have these conversations and work out optimal ways forward. So if you're all comfortable with that, we're going to write that as a sort of point from this meeting. Tim, sorry that I missed you earlier.
Yeah, well, it's just about the two products that are not in the room, and I think we shouldn't make it too complicated, because I think there's a lot to do from these. If you ignore the natural resource governance framework and human dependency, what we currently have, which we are advanced in working on and getting that integrated, as a job in itself. But it seemed to me from the meeting we had in Glasgow before we came here, that these two other products, apart from being much less further down the line than anything else we've got on board, might both be quite different sort of questions and problems around them, and integrating the spatial data sets that we have. And they're in quite fuzzy space, it seems to me at the moment. The human dependency on nature thing, I think, just needs a lot of discussion about what it is we're trying to do and how helpful is it. There was a lot of discussion around firstly not messaging that poverty is a good thing, and how do we sort of go around all the stories that would be around that. And secondly, we might sort of say that everybody's dependent on nature, because we eat plants and animals, and we drink water. Then we need to be a little careful about the message there. But the other one, the natural resource governance framework, it seems to me, there's a big question around how much is that a spatial-driven knowledge product, because it seems to me, the way it's
haven't decided yet.
described at the moment, it maybe isn't. And I Simon's point, it's being advanced at the moment. It's a very good idea that is, tapping into a particular part of the governance agenda, it seems to me. But some things which we might wish to speak to governance, and especially if, I don't know if I missed the start, but we've got a Paul's diagram that shows the natural resource governance framework sitting around absolutely everything else. Might be we need to sort of think about whether the scope of that is, big enough as currently, as it's currently talked about. It seems to me there are things which would actually be very spatial and actually quite easy to think about around how much of the information we have on the left of this can be cut out and analysed quickly at the national level, the primary level. Governance would often be interested in talking to is what's the level of importance at the national level. Another would be somebody.
So there's a load of things. There's a load of things.
Yeah,
and we decided not to focus on those here. And I've written this as the aspirational linkage, right?
Yeah.
But I think what the colleagues who are doing this work realise is that they might as well learn from us, who have had experience of the programs that have experience in this. Simon, do you want to add? Because I think you've been in discussion with Stuart McGuinness recently. He's developing he's in charge of both of these two, but Simon had a chat with him.
Well, just the conversation we've been having the last couple of days with Stuart McGuinness is we were talking mainly about the human dependency of nature, but it actually applies just as much to the natural resource governance framework. These are hugely complex, and what I've been suggesting, and that Stuart is very receptive to, is we actually, before we really start implementing or going into development, we actually put together a framework, for example, on human dependency of nature, all the different types of dependencies, local, consumptive, non-consumptive, whatever. Come up with a framework, first of all, that encompasses it all. And then, having done that, look at the bits we can actually develop there and then. And so, for instance, use of biological resources and species for food and medicine locally is probably a relatively easy one. As you get a percentage of the household income, and you can actually measure it. But there's some others to do with ecosystem services delivered locally or whatever. They're going to be much harder to measure, but our part. And so the idea is to come up with a framework. The result of this will be that I think these two knowledge products over there on the right, some aspects of them might develop quite fast, and other aspects are to be developed later. And the bits that develop fast, the easier ones, are probably going to be easier or relatively straightforward to integrate into these other ones, I suspect. So that's how I see it developing over the next few years.
The same with governance framework as well, as we start with.
Well, thanks very much for these comments. I mean, I think what it shows is that the folks who are developing the new products might as well learn from the experience of people like Simon. So obviously that just happened with their discussion. So that's very good. Anything else on this diagram before we stop and take a picture of it, which we're going to do?
I just wanted to comment on